Hello, everyone. We are so excited to be bringing you a conversation about what it might take to create your own Oracle card deck. Anna and I have been kind of crossing paths over the last several years, and we finally decided that we need to really do something more meaningful, more collaborative. So together, we're going to kind of have a conversation about both Oracle card decks and publishing, which is the space I'm in. So I want to introduce you to Anna Frolik. She is the founder of Wonderland Publishing, and she is the creator of the Oracle of the Magical Fairy Forest. She's been creating Oracle and card decks for herself and others and supporting them and bringing those decks to life for almost 13 years. And she is the co-founder of the Deck Creators Launchpad. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Nicolette. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really
Yeah.
excited.
Me too. I'm so excited for this conversation. And I think it's a testament to kind of the work we do and how we do it because we kind of didn't need the real structured infrastructure. We're like, you know what? Let's get on a call. Let's record it. Let's have a conversation. And so that's what we're doing today. And I'm excited to dig into the work that you've been doing, the work you're doing now, and people who are curious about this kind of work, giving them a bit more information.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And I just want to give everyone a heads up too. So we're basically doing a two-part collaboration. So today I'm being interviewed by Nicolette, and then next week we'll switch roles and I'll ask Nicolette some questions about publishing books. So that's kind of how we complement each other.
Yes, absolutely. So if you are curious about creating an oracle or card deck, if writing a book has been on your mind, if you're creative, if you're kind of like, I love the idea of, pouring something, my vision, my mission into my work, then this is probably going to be a really fruitful conversation. And Anna and I are both very much embodied in the work we do. So it's not just about a business, but it's about how we live. And I think you'll kind of sense some of that. That's a big kind of overlap, I feel like, in how we kind of move through the world. Our work is an extension of us, but our the life we're living and kind of the paths we're carving are equally as important to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just talking about that with one of our podcast guests yesterday. I feel like there's such a difference. I mean, there are different types of teachers, and I think everyone has their place in the world, and we're all here for different reasons and with different missions. But for me, I feel like it's been a really important part of the journey, like really coming down into this earth realm more. And it's
Yeah.
actually something that really stands out to me now when I look back at how I created my first Oracle deck versus the one that I launched last year. So I have my first one here. It's the Magical Heart Healing cards. And when I created this deck, I was just getting started on my my big adventure
Yeah.
of, well, a long story, but basically I gave up my entire life. I was living in Europe at the time, which was also where I was born, but I had been here in Canada before, but that was just the time when I knew I just needed to be free to travel and to explore. And so there was a lot going on. I was also kind of in the middle of a spiritual awakening, and I had been on a creative path before, but I had the idea to create an oracle deck because I loved working with card decks. And
I was going to ask kind of what sparked the initial curiosity around creating your first deck.
yeah, so maybe I'll just briefly go into it, but
Yeah.
before I embarked on the more spiritual journey. I mean, it's been a lifelong journey for me, really, as well. But
Yeah.
my first business was a copywriting business, and before that, I was in advertising for a few years in the corporate world. And so I had that creative connection. The creative part was really important to me. But then everything shifted when I just hit a wall in that business, and I felt like there's something was missing. And then
Mm.
That's triggered kind of a spiritual awakening. And then I got started on the journey as an angel card reader and healer. And I was working with Oracle decks. And then the two worlds, kind of merged pretty quickly. I just had this desire to create my own card deck. And so very early on this journey, I started channeling through the messages for this deck, the magical heart healing cards, and I was pretty much just receiving the medicine that I needed for myself at the time.
Yes.
And so that was also, of course, when we receive something that's helpful for us, it's always going to help other people. But
Yeah.
now just coming full circle with this deck, I feel this is kind of the embodied version of of this
Yes.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your most recent deck, the Oracle of Magical Fairy Forest. What kind of inspired you to create the second deck?
So this one had really been a long time coming, and for many years I had been supporting others on the journey of creating their own card decks. That was really my main business
Yeah.
activity and my main source of income for almost 6 years. Um, well, I mean, there have been phases to that as well. I had the
Sure.
DIY course a lot longer before I started supporting others more with done for you work, but so that started about 7 years ago. But so I was really focused on supporting others on this journey, and I had a lot of ideas for decks that I wanted to create as well and other projects that I wanted
Sure.
to bring to life, but it was always on the back burner because I felt like I didn't have the space to really,
Really.
fully commit to it. And I know that some people will probably be able to relate to this, and for some people, it's easier to focus on multiple things at a time.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, there was just
Yeah.
a time of transition where I felt that I needed to free up more space and time for my own creative projects, and that happened in late 2024. And then the idea just came through really clearly one day. I knew, okay, it's time to start creating the deck, and it's going to be a fairy deck. And then it just came together really quickly.
I love it. And then when did you release the deck?
So we started creating it, I think, in October, November 2024, and we launched on Kickstarter in June last year, so 2025.
Awesome. I want to get into the Kickstarter side of things too, but something really cool and curious that you mentioned is that I think a lot of people who are listening to this are going to resonate with is with your first deck, and I'm sure this happened with your second deck as well, is like the downloaded messages that you were receiving were also for your own healing. And also, did you feel like because you were energetically moving through that and then creating at the same time, did that feel like you were infusing some of that like healing and spiritual energy inside the deck?
Yeah, I think that's definitely always part of the process, but it was very different with this deck compared to the first one. I
Hmm.
feel like this deck is really a combination of lessons that I've learned over a really long period of time,
Yeah,
past 10 years or longer, plus lessons that I was working through at the time when I was
sure.
creating the deck. So it was both, but
Yeah.
I feel like they're always, it's part of really getting the medicine out there in a way that makes an impact is like we really need to embody what we teach. So the things that were
Yeah,
out of alignment needed to come into alignment. So I was able to
sure.
really bring it through and launch it successfully.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
I feel like I got to see Witness based on your beautiful Instagram channel, and at the time you were doing so many of these like really beautiful nature, like I could tell you were just like deep in these forests and experiences and connecting so deeply. I know you were doing a lot of that while you were creating this deck. Did that influence, was that part of, I guess, was that like intentional or was that like a byproduct or did it just kind of all kind of happen naturally?
I would say the connection to nature that came long before the deck. That's always
Um,
been really important to me. And before I
mhm.
moved to Ontario a couple years ago, I was in BC on the West Coast for a really long time, and I was just always outside. Like every day, I would go for hikes in nature whenever I
Yeah.
could. I don't think I hardly ever missed one day. So I would,
Mm,
I just feel really drawn to that energy. I think nature is important to me. Also, the connection to the fairies really comes from that. Like I
yeah.
feel, if you believe in parallel or past lives, I feel like I'm very much an elemental soul, like an incarnated elemental
Absolutely.
being.
Yes.
So being
Yes.
in nature is really important. And
Did it
then
inspire kind of the creation?
definitely,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, so I think I got a lot of inspiration from my time in nature for this deck, but it wasn't exclusive to just that time when I created the deck.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So it was just kind of something that had been such an important part of your life and your journey, and then you got to kind of express it through the deck, but also sharing a lot of your, adventures on social media, which just they absolutely look magical. So I'm just like, yes, I can see where all of this, just the inspiration, and I think being able to stay connected to it is really special. So, yeah.
Yes, and that's actually been coming up a little bit lately. I feel like I've been missing the nature
Mhm.
connection a little bit. Um, like
Yeah,
winters here in Ontario are definitely different from
I'm
winters
sure.
in BC.
Mm,
And I feel like this was a really long winter and there's just not a lot of opportunity to, really get out into nature because all the trails are like snowed in and
yeah,
yeah, and it just only now
not
we're
the
kind
same.
of getting out for more regular hikes
Yeah.
again and it makes such a huge difference and yeah,
Yeah,
really feel how
yeah.
I've been missing that.
And I feel like I felt why I wanted to mention it is because it feels like such a natural, like, I mean, just from knowing what I know about you, it feels like it's been such a like energetically charged, like nature flows into your work, and then your no your work kind of flows into nature, and it's really a beautiful reciprocity. And I think also just the gentleness of your spirit and how you kind of show up feels very just anchored and grounded. So it makes me think about how like nature is, just really gentle in some ways. But that doesn't mean that nature is not bold because it also is. So yeah, so just reflecting some of that back to you. But I want to get into specifically the work you're doing now inside your membership. So, you have a membership called the Deck Creators Launchpad. And do you want to tell us a little bit about that? What it is that you all do in there? And just kind of give us an idea of what someone might expect if they're considering if like creating a deck has been on their mind, or maybe even hearing this conversation has sparked the idea of it. Maybe they never thought that that would be something that could be something that they could achieve. Kind of why did you create it, and then who is like a really great candidate to participate in that membership?
Okay, so I'll start a little bit with the story behind what inspired me to bring this to life.
That
So I feel
sounds
like it's
great.
it's really a merging of the two directions I was taking for a while. So I had the DIY course, which was kind of, a course that was guiding DIY creators on the journey of creating and
And
launching
that
and
was basically birthed from you just learning how to do it on your own, right? You're kind of like,
exactly.
oh, I can do this, and then I can show someone else how to do this too.
Yeah, so that
Mhm.
the first version of that course came to life a long time ago. I think in 2015. That was shortly after maybe a few years after I started creating my first deck. But I just got a lot of
Gotcha.
questions from other intuitives and
Mhm.
creators who wanted to know how I did it. And so I saw there was
Sure.
a lot of interest, and it made sense at some point to
Yeah.
turn that into a course. And then about 4 years later, I started. offering done free services for creators, who wanted more support, not DIY
Yeah,
it.
were you
And
running into people who were like, yes, I want that, but I don't want to learn how to create a deck. I
mm,
really just want the support and someone to do it for me. Is that kind of the evolution of that?
I can't even really fully remember, but I feel like
Yeah.
it was a transition that needed to happen for many
Mm-hmm.
reasons. And yeah, there's a whole story behind that too. But I was in more in the coaching world before that, and I
Mm-hmm.
just hit a wall there where I felt like there was a misalignment, and I was
Sure.
struggling to keep things going, and I was really holding
Yeah.
on to it for a long time. But then, yeah, there was a time where I knew I needed to make a decision, and then it became clear to me that I needed to move back into more creative direction. And
Mm-hmm.
that was just a question that I asked myself, like, what are some things, or what is one thing that I could imagine doing every single day? What would I enjoy doing every single day? And creating
Mm.
Oracle decks was like top of the list. So I put out an
I love that
offer.
question. I love that question. So, for anyone who's maybe kind of struggling with their own alignment in their purpose, or what would I love doing every single day? It's simple, but really actually pretty deep. So,
Yeah, so I started putting out some feelers, but I think then about half a year later, I really knew, okay, it's time for a shift. I put up a post on social media announcing that I'm officially available for creative services and had a few different offers. I think one was like content creation, maybe one was websites, and one was
mm,
creating Oracle decks. And
okay.
that offer, the Oracle decks, had just landed so well with my audience. Like I got so much interest immediately, and yeah, within a pretty short period of time, I was fully booked, and it was for a long period of time, I was fully booked. But yeah, so then, I started creating card decks with and for clients, and so I learned a lot. And but I already started seeing, quite early on that journey that my own creative projects were being put on the back burner too much, and
Yeah.
so I started looking into ways to free up more space and time for myself again. And initially, that took on the form of, hiring other creatives like artists
Mm,
and um, graphic designers to support me with the projects. But still, I felt like there was space for something new. So I got the inspiration for kind of a combination of the two, where it's okay, we bring in all the course materials and the,
yeah.
everything that I can offer to help people, learn the
Yeah.
process, but then there's also more of that guided, personalized support, but it's not as hands-on for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it coming, but I had the vision, and I knew that I wasn't supposed to do this on my own. And I didn't know who I was supposed to create it with. And there were maybe some people on my radar, but nothing really clicked yet, or it just didn't feel like totally
Yeah.
aligned. And then maybe about half a year later, I got an email one morning from Heath Armstrong. He's the co-founder of Rage Create, and he's created, I think, four beautiful card decks so far and working on more now. And he'd been really successful with Kickstarter launches. Like he made it over 200,000 US
Yeah.
dollars just in Kickstarter funds from launching his
Wow.
decks. And so
Wow.
he had I guess this idea that he wanted to support others on the journey of creating decks as well. And one, I guess one day he was sitting in meditation, and this idea just came to him that there was this publisher woman that he needed to reach out to. And then days later he found me, and then he reached out to me, and we started connecting. And it was still a bit of a journey after that, but we decided
Sure.
that we were gonna launch this together. So that's the story. But
Mhm.
basically who it's for, it's really for, let's say, anyone who wants to create a card deck, whether it's an Oracle deck or a tarot deck or affirmation deck,
Mhm.
or it doesn't
Sure.
have to be a spiritually focused deck. It could be
Yeah. There's
art
all kinds of
based.
different like question like game type decks to kind of pull
Exactly.
people
So
into your
any deck,
mentality. Yeah. Okay.
educational decks. So we're a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more open in that way. And so we basically walk you through the whole process step by step. Heath and I have both been on this journey for a very long time. We spent a lot of time, effort, money also figuring things
Yeah.
out and piecing
Yeah.
together all the parts. And it's a very complex process if you have no idea where to start. Like you can spend a
Sure.
lot of time researching and looking
Yeah.
for, things like printing options and figuring out how to, do the whole whole even
Yeah.
preparing files for printing and like where do I get started? How do I get it
Yeah.
printed? Then how do I launch it? That's the whole other story. So how do I actually, build a following in a way that allows me to successfully launch the deck and then sell it long term. So we really
Yeah.
have that whole process laid out. And yeah, I think now we've both done Kickstarter campaigns. We do really enjoy supporting creators with that part of the process, but it's not exclusive to that. But it is definitely, I think maybe something we'll be focusing on a little bit more as we keep moving
Sure.
forward. And so we're both
It's
really excited about
it
that part.
it sounds like it's a really comprehensive, so kind of from idea to um design to, like the creation process and then all the way through to market, right? In that process with your current members, where do you think people kind of get stuck the most?
I feel like it's very different for everyone, and I've seen that while working with clients one on one, and I feel like it's similar in the membership as well.
Hmm.
So one thing I always say is creating a card deck is a journey of expansion. Like it's a big
Yeah.
project, probably similar to writing a book, but
Yeah.
it's not just like, you know, creating one painting and it's like it's a
Right.
whole
It's a whole
collection of
progression, right?
art
And
in
there's
one
a lot
deck
of
and
different hats that you're putting on, right? In the process and like kind of so someone might be really good at creating the art, but they have no idea about like the production piece or the marketing is where they get snagged. So I can understand why people would get snagged kind of different places.
yeah. And I also just want to mention briefly that, you know, I really enjoy the networking aspect of it or the
Mm.
collaborative, collective aspect of it, because it's not just Heath and I teaching, but we have the whole community and we're all experts in different areas. We can support each other in different ways. We
Sure.
can cheer each other on. So not doing it on your own in that way is really beneficial as well.
Hmm.
And maybe you're a writer and you're not good at design. We can connect you with an artist or a graphic designer who can help you with that part.
Mm.
But just kind of getting back to your question about where people get stuck. So I feel like, yeah, everyone's different. So they're the types of people who have a lot of ideas, for example, and they get stuck deciding where am I going to start. So that
Mm.
can be one thing.
Yeah.
Um, then others maybe struggle more with the creative process, like how do I bring my idea into physical form? So having
Yeah.
that structured guidance is really helpful because
Mm.
you kind of have a step-by-step path that you can
Yeah.
follow and then we have the group calls as well where we can offer personalized coaching and all that. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah, and
imagine that it's such a comprehensive process that you could just get lost in the process of trying to do it alone, and potentially, get stalled in any one of those spaces. So
yeah.
I love that you create this container, to kind of move people through it, and then also the support and, like you said, being around other creators when you're in that process can feel like because creating anything, especially with depth and detail and all the parts, can feel really lonely. It can be a lonely journey. So kind of calling in that community of other people who are like, yeah, I'm doing this too. And kind of reminding you and reminding others, kind of depending on where you're at, emotionally in the process of like, this is why, like kind of keeping you anchored into it. I could see that being such a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe then just a couple other areas where I see people getting stuck just to answer
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
question. Oh, I gotta plug in my computer here. It's got a low battery warning here. Yeah, so printing is another one where a lot of people get stuck.
Sure.
And that's one thing I always like to recommend, like find your printer early in the process. There's so many reasons why
Yeah.
we want to do that. Maybe we can go into that a little bit later. But yeah, like how do I get it printed and then the whole logistics pieces behind that. It can be quite complex, but we can
Mm,
help make it more simple. Um, and then the visibility part, I think, is another one that's really it takes a lot of people outside of their comfort zone. Because a lot of creators are more on the introverted side. It's kind of like,
yeah.
why we enjoy doing this for some in some ways. We really enjoy being in our little hermit's cave, writing and making art, and then,
Yeah.
but that's not where the journey
At some
ends. So we
point you
also
have
want to
to,
put it out
yeah,
there.
it's at some
Yeah.
point you have to say, okay, now, and present it. And I'm sure that, people can get, I know with books, that's a snag for people, because it's a big shift from that creator energy, even the producing energy and, to like the visibility and I'm sure there's also potentially an element of kind of coming out of the spiritual closet or really anchoring into this persona, of I'm someone who, if it is a more spiritual leaning deck, kind of anchoring in if it's not something they've been visible about before.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that happening in some cases, and that can take on a lot of different forms. And I mean, some
Hmm.
teachers have been out there teaching for a long time, and for
Sure.
them, typically that's not where they get stuck. It may
Yeah.
kind of be the moment before we get it printed, like the resistance really starts to build up, kind of the last part
Yeah.
of bringing it to life physically. But then yeah, like for more experienced business owners, often the launch is not the problem because they've launched so many things so many times
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
But
And the
for
visibility isn't as big of an issue. They're
yeah,
comfortable with it and already doing that in different ways.
yeah, but
For
for
those,
newer, yeah,
yeah.
sorry, for newer people, I've seen that happening more often, and so
Yeah.
that's yeah,
I,
yeah.
it kind of makes me think about you talking about your first stack and you had been doing readings and I'm sure there was an element of, oh, okay, now I'm stepping further into this. So just kind of made me think that could be something that could come up. Is there any other kind of snags that people find themselves in getting caught up in?
Yeah, I feel like I mean, there can be a lot of different pieces, but I think the launch part as well, that's something I really struggled with for a long time, just not having the structure around launching and because
Yeah.
I do have a really structured part of my personality. I can do it really well for other people, but
Yeah.
when I do it for myself, I'm a lot more go with the flow. And I
I
feel
can
like
relate to that so much.
having
It's like, yes.
yeah.
You need yourself as you need to be your like you need to be your own client, so to speak, you know what I mean, to kind of create that infrastructure. And I also think even for business owners who, are successful in their business and doing things, that doesn't mean they know how to launch something like this, especially if they're like a service provider or doing different kinds of entrepreneurship doesn't always lend itself to the same type of kind of sales and marketing.
That's definitely true. And I think, yeah, let's say if you're mostly focused on providing services, it can be like launching a product can be different. I feel
Yeah.
like for the types of entrepreneurs who've, spent many times building an email list and maybe they've launched courses and those types of products, launching a card deck typically is not very difficult for them. They
Sure.
just know
Yeah.
how it works. But maybe, maybe there are those maybe types of coaches that focus a lot on launching on social media or maybe, more high ticket offers. And it's a very
Sure.
different way
Hmm.
of like with high ticket, okay, if you're mostly focusing on that, you don't need as many people, like you don't need as many
Sure.
sales.
Yeah, and
And
it's a different, a lot of
mm,
times it's a different nurturing kind of,
mm,
with your audience, you're building deeper relationships, or maybe your business is ran off a lot of referrals that might not extend itself to, selling Oracle cards, for example.
mm. Yeah, so typically with products like an Oracle deck, or I think with books, it's the same thing. You just have to be a
Hmm.
lot more visible and you really
Yeah,
have to be reaching enough people to make the
yeah,
impact that you're here to make.
yeah. So, what does the journey look like inside your membership from concept to completed deck? Um, Kind of where can you walk me through what someone who is coming into your membership, what they would kind of experience?
Okay, I can give you a brief overview. So there's, the guided part of the process where we walk our members through the whole journey step by step. And then there's like the personalized support that's added onto it. But just to explain the process briefly, so we start with the visioning process, getting really clear on your vision. What are you going to create? What's the topic of your deck? What's the name of your deck? What's the
Sure.
medicine you're bringing in? What's your message? What is your ideal client? Like who
Mm.
are you creating it for? And then down to the physical details of the deck as well. What is it going to look like? What is the art going to look like? How many
Yeah.
cards? What kind of box? Is there a guidebook? And so on. So
Sure.
just to keep it really short and simple. But I feel like having that really clear, grounded vision in the beginning is really important because if you don't
Yeah.
have that and you just start creating kind of whatever, then you're gonna get scattered really quickly. And there's other things connected to that as well. I think even successfully launching and selling it later on, that's part of that too.
Creating
But
that infrastructure is
yeah,
important. I do
but
think, especially for creatives,
mm,
we can get lost in the process for sure if we're left to our own devices.
mm,
So having that structure, I'm sure, is it's interesting because I think sometimes we think structure is going to be like, oh, well, I don't want to be limited, but actually it creates freedom to be able to actually explore all of it without getting lost in the process.
mm. Yeah, and I think the visioning part is really it's very creative. I mean, we do
Yeah,
provide some structure with the
sure.
questions, but it's a really connected way of bringing through the vision. So there's an intuitive part to it as well, and just kind
Nice.
of realigning with the essence of what's important to you, even beyond just creating the deck, but your vision for your business and your life as a whole. How does everything work together? So we start there. And and then we go into the creative process. So creating the content for the deck, which is if there's a guidebook, then there's a phase of writing the guidebook, or at the very least, there's
Yeah,
going to be content on the cards. And so, especially if you're collaborating with a designer, you really want to have the content ready before you start designing. And
absolutely.
and then also doing a bit of research to find the right printing solution for you. I always recommend doing that early in the process. Um, and the whole process of designing the deck, and there can be different ways of doing that. You might want to do it yourself if you're,
Yeah.
skilled at that and you have a good eye for design. If not, you can collaborate with an artist and designer
And
who
you
can.
provide those kinds of resources to kind of folks that you trust, and also maybe give ideas for people how to connect with those kinds of providers.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a network of people that we've vetted and worked with personally, and some that we've maybe just talked to. And but we do have a resource list of creative service providers, and if
Yeah.
somebody is looking for someone we don't have on our list, then we can help them find those
Yeah.
connections as well. Um, yeah, so there's that part, designing it. Then next part is finding your ideal publishing solution. So are you going to self-publish? Do you want to try and work with a traditional publisher? We definitely focus more on the self-publishing part because that's, I think,
Yeah.
typically what our people look for more. Like they want to have the autonomy on the process, on the journey. And
Yeah. And the product.
there's a lot of reasons why self-publishing can be a good fit for someone. Maybe we can go into that a little bit more later. And yeah,
Mhm.
then producing the deck and then the logistics, like, getting them shipped. Um,
Mm.
like first, how do I get them shipped to my home? Or you may want to have a warehouse space somewhere, like a fulfillment center
Yeah.
that helps you
Mm.
fulfill your orders, like setting up those pieces. And yeah, and then we go into launching and selling basically those parts, and then the long-term support around that. I mean, that can be a journey of many, many years after the first launch.
I'm sure it can be. And so this is kind of an evergreen or opportunity for people to just join at any time, correct?
At this time it is, but we may actually change that at some point.
Mm.
You know, we've done a couple rounds now, like we did a first beta round. We launched that in, I think, late 2024, actually.
Mhm.
And now recently we onboarded a bunch of new members, and we're seeing, what works and what doesn't,
Yeah.
and we're still
Yeah,
making
it's
some
an
changes.
evolution, working it out. So right now people can come in and then I'm guessing there's just kind of pre-recorded content guidance and information, but then they also have the ability to ask questions not only in your community, but you also give some regular live calls where people can kind of get the support in real time.
Yes, exactly. So there's a community part with community threads, like different categories. It's a little bit like Slack or
Sure.
like a
Yeah.
forum type
Yeah.
environment where you can ask questions anytime, and then
Yeah.
we come in and help to answer those questions, and you'll get feedback from other members as well. So it's really that
Yeah.
community aspect. And then we do have at least one Q&A call each month, but we also do workshops and different topics. So right now we're doing a series of workshops guiding our members through the whole process in addition to the
Okay.
pre-recorded course materials. So we can go a little bit deeper there. And yeah, so we're recording all of those, and those recordings will be available.
What's
Um,
the typical timeline for someone to create a deck usually?
I feel like it's very different for different people. For some
Hmm.
people, it takes years. Like it can be a
Hmm.
very long process, especially if they don't have the guidance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had a lot of people come to me, like working with me, who had been working on their deck in some way for many, many years, and now they're
Mm.
finally ready to make it real, and we're kind of
Yeah.
taking those last steps together. And if you have the guidance there, it will definitely tend to go a little bit faster. I've had people go through my courses within a month, like that happens too. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it really depends
What do
on,
you think is like the most practical? Like what would you like,
mm,
especially like when you were working like the done for you services? What's like the
mm,
recommended time? Like what would be the ideal timeline, do you think? I mean, I know it
yeah.
depends on where people are at, like their other commitments and how focused they are, but
Mm.
like ideally, because I feel like yes, someone could spend years, but how much of that time was really productive? You know what I mean? Or was it just a lot of like kind of fumbling through it?
Yeah, so done for you will definitely help to speed it up because we commit to timeline, and it's
Yeah.
usually I would do 6 month packages, especially
Mm,
for projects where we're creating the art
yeah.
while we're working together. Um, if the art has already been created and like everything's ready, it can be a little bit shorter than that. It could be more like
Sure.
2 or 3 months sometimes. But
Okay.
I would say within the membership, if you're doing more on your own, I would say give yourself at least half a year up to a year. I think that would be a good time
Okay.
frame.
Yeah. Because I think
Yeah.
sometimes like not having, like not putting any time restrictions can be a disadvantage for us when we're trying to move any kind of we just, it's easy to get lost in it, right? And sometimes that just creates doubt and hesitation and just really doesn't really serve us or the project. So having some kind of like container around the time, even if you're not like totally like married to that timeline, but at least having some guided points to like, okay, yeah, this is moving, this is real, this is something that's actually getting progress and like making movement.
I agree with you because I feel like the creative part is part of the process, but the inner work that comes with it, that can bring up a lot of
Yes.
resistance, and often it's not conscious, right? It
Yeah.
can manifest as perfectionism or a lot of different things. But when you have a certain level of commitment, okay, I'm committing to this time frame or doing it
Yeah.
in this way, then it does help to speed up that process. And then, and the
Yeah.
community can also be there to hold space for those
Yeah.
transformations, or maybe there's a specific question that comes up, but you may think, oh, this is the problem, but it's actually something else
There's
that's
something else that's
sitting
like,
there, right?
hey, yes, and having
So
some outside perspective and awareness, I'm sure is super beneficial. And I think sometimes yeah, there's a lot of like undercurrent and things that we move through emotionally when we're creating a creative project, especially something that is meaningful to us, that feels like an extension of us. Um, and so my question for you about this, because I'm so curious about this is one of my favorite things about working with authors actually when they're writing a book. And I experienced it also writing my first solo book, and like the whole progression of it is the person we're becoming in the process of writing or publishing a book or creating an oracle deck and publishing it, like the person we're becoming is equally as important as having the end result, right? And so I'd love to kind of talk to you about that, like your own personal experience with because it's hard I don't know, for me it's hard to kind of explain to people that you won't be the same person when you're ready to publish, or when you've published this deck, it's very likely that you're going to be a very different version of yourself through this process. Is that something you kind of experienced also?
I definitely resonate with that, especially reflecting on my own journey. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a long journey, but even just kind of taking the creation of this most
Yeah.
recent deck and as an example. I mean, there's different levels to it. I think it's the personal transformation. Even just making the decision to bring this to life required me to really let go of some toxic
Mm.
parts of, things that I was holding on
Sure.
to that had been an important part of my business or my journey for a long time, but that needed to shift because it was no longer in alignment with where I was heading. So there was a lot
Yeah.
there that needed to, be put into alignment. So I even had the time and the space to start working on this project.
Yeah. So
And
just the commitment of just deciding, like, and then realizing you had to
mm,
reorganize some things in the
yeah, and
process.
just setting myself free. I think that was a really big part of creating
Hmm.
this deck. But then also the whole business part that comes with it. I feel like,
Hmm.
especially launching this deck on Kickstarter, I feel like it
Yeah.
really helped to speed up things up when you go this big. Like you really see where the missing pieces are. You know what you need to put into place so that you
Yeah.
can, you know, launch on this day and all the things you need to
Yeah, and
prepare.
so
Yeah.
going through that process, and it sounds like it was a little bit different than the first deck that you created. Um, did you kind of find yourself being like, oh yeah, kind of walking your own walk, or walking your own talk, so to speak, where it's like you had probably guided some of your clients on some of this, and then you're like, oh, this is what I meant by that, kind of experiencing it firsthand.
Yeah, I think in some ways, but I also would say that creating my own deck was a very different experience compared
Yeah.
to helping clients go through this process. It's a very
Mm.
different perspective, and that's actually been really helpful for me now in terms of
Yeah.
guiding others more in the mastermind
Yeah.
setting because I have more of that firsthand experience. I mean, I'd done it
Yeah.
before with this deck, but
Yeah.
that was such a long time ago. It was a very different
Yeah.
process.
And this was an evolution. And that's kind of what I
Mm.
mean is when you go through your own experience of it, kind of, I know for me, when I was writing and publishing my book, I had these moments where it's like, oh, this is what I'm like, this is how my clients probably felt. And then this was the feedback I gave them at the time, which was really sound, and oftentimes the right feedback, but actually understanding the reason, like, oh, this is what I meant by that is kind of some of the things that I experienced. So I think it's interesting when we get to like actually move through, like really embody it and understand it. It really deepens, I think, our understanding of the entire process.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And one thing that comes to mind too now is that actually I would say creating this deck was it was extremely like it felt extremely quick and easy for me. I think
Mm.
after having done this work for
Sure.
so many people. Um,
That makes
also,
you had a good process.
maybe a bit of a vulnerable share here, but I think all of us service providers and the
Hmm.
creative realm can relate to this. You work with a lot of different people and people who are in very different places in their journey. And sometimes you might have a client who's just not ready to step out of their comfort zone in the way that really helps them, allows them to succeed on the level that they envisioned, or maybe, there are a lot
Yeah.
of different um, ways this can manifest. And like for me, often that was really stressful when I felt like, my hands were
Mm.
tied because I felt like I
Yeah.
couldn't help them in the way like I could deliver,
You knew what they
perfect
needed to do,
services.
but
Like I
it
could,
was kind of up to them to be able to do it, and then realizing the gap
mm,
and like because you want them to be successful, and you have to kind of surrender to them doing what is best for them and moving through the process, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean
Mm.
that's a whole journey in itself too. I
Yeah,
think just releasing the attachment of feeling so responsible for everybody else's journey that's
I can
a big
understand that
one. I
completely.
think the more I
Yes.
can detach from that, the easier it gets to,
Yeah.
be more
Yeah,
actually be a
because
better
someone comes
guide.
to
But
you and says, "Oh,
mm,
I'm going to do this, and these are all the things it's going to do, and this is how it's going to support my business, and this is what I want to do." And then as you're moving through it, they're, bumping up against some of their own friction and things and moving through it. And then when it comes down to it, it's really up to them to decide, to choose and to, move forward. And there is this level of kind of like it can become a level of like, oh, it's up to like the service provider to make sure their dream, but it's like you did your job. You helped them create this beautiful deck. You showed them the path for how to have a successful outcome, to do the things that they had hoped and desired would happen, but ultimately it's in their hands, right?
yeah, so I think where I'm going with this is, I think if I feel too attached to or too responsible for somebody else's process, then I may also end up taking it personally if someone doesn't,
Mm,
maybe it could be something like we create this really beautiful deck together, but then when it comes to
yeah.
sharing it with the world, they just disappear from the face of the earth. That's happened a few
Yes.
times, and that feels really like
Ah,
really disheartening for me.
I
Um,
I can imagine. Yeah, I
and
understand
then
that.
or it can maybe even create a sense of maybe affect my confidence a little bit, like what am I doing wrong, or
Yeah,
what
like,
what did I
wait,
miss,
would they not
and
like it? Or,
or
yeah.
or did I
Mm.
and then I think the journey of creating my newest deck kind of helped me see that, oh, I actually really know how to do this, and like
Yes.
I could implement in the way that I knew
Yeah.
was gonna work, and it flowed really easily, and so
Yeah.
I feel that that in itself was healing for me, and it was, you know,
I love that you got to
kind
have
of
this
put
moment.
that
Look
into
how far I've
perspective.
kind of look how far I've come. You know what I mean? I
Mm.
think you've worked with so many clients, you've done this before, and then the second time it sounds like you had this moment of like, oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm good at this, and that's why you're able to like produce it quicker and move through it. And I think that's so valuable for any creative entrepreneur or person, especially when you do both service work for other people and then doing your own creation is that sometimes we're building bricks, and then sometimes we're putting those bricks together. And it can feel really confusing sometimes, or like we're on the wrong path when we're building the bricks. But then when it's time to like put all those bricks together, you're so happy that you spent the time creating those.
Yeah. And it's going to be different every time too. Like we're working on a new project now. We started actually working on a coloring book early this year, and
Oh,
it's
yay.
also starting to
Yay.
take on the form of a card deck, most likely.
Okay.
But now this project so far has felt like, it's not been as easy as this most
Yeah.
recent one. It's a very
It's
different
a little outside of
process.
your comfort zone too, right? So different kinds of project than you've worked on in the past.
Mm. Yeah, I mean the coloring book, that's a new learning experience in that way, but I think just the whole journey of bringing this deck to life is
Mhm.
very, very different, and I think the medicine is only revealing itself as we're working
Mm.
on it, and so I get to like work through the lessons on the journey, and and
Yeah,
then the next step comes. But yeah, so every project is going to be different as well.
that's true. And they're all, especially, when we are very connected to like the spiritual aspect or the deeper lessons and meaning, or if I think that's something that is underappreciated in the creation process. And it kind of goes back to like the lessons and then who we're becoming in the process of creating this specific creation is pretty
Absolutely.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think some of the like business advantages are for someone considering doing an Oracle or de card deck? What what would people, what would be some of the reasons why it would make sense for someone on a from the business perspective?
So there are a few different ways to approach it. I think it really comes back to your big vision for your business. There are creators who are mostly interested in building a product-based business, and they build a brand around their deck, so it's all
Mm,
physical products. Like a lot of sellers on Etsy, for example, fall in that category.
mhm.
Or
Sure.
artists often, there are artists who
Yeah.
have been creating art for years, and they make a deck. It's kind of a, it's
Yeah.
it's one way they share their art with the
Yeah.
world, and they have that whole brand that they've built or are building. So building that
Mhm.
type of business is going to be very different from maybe someone who has a service-based business, let's say in the
Mhm.
coaching world, or a coach or a healer,
Mhm.
someone who offers transformational services in some ways. Um, then the card deck, often it's not going to be a big money-making project on its own. Like it's different. Let's say I think the profit potential with a card deck is definitely higher than with a book, like just through
Mhm.
selling
Yeah.
the decks, because you have a better profit
Yeah.
margin with card
Yes.
decks. But
Sure.
still, you can use it as more of an entry level offer to increase your visibility. Sometimes it can be a more accessible product for, a wider audience that maybe not everybody's going to want to work with you privately, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like that funnel. Okay, it's the entry level product, and then you can combine it with courses, and maybe you have a coaching
Mm.
program that comes after that. So it's more a part of that marketing funnel.
Sure.
And also, creative outlet, I think for a lot of business owners,
Sure.
I think it's actually a really important thing.
Yeah.
It's, I feel like it's very freeing for a lot of people
Mhm.
who've been doing a certain kind of work for a long time. Maybe they're helping a lot of other people, but then creating a card deck is kind of like a an outlet for them to express themselves more freely in
Yeah.
a more creative way, and that can really benefit the
That
growth
has
of everything,
it's
you
hard
know.
to know how that's going to kind of show up in different places, right?
Yeah.
In kind of someone's business. And I also see it as kind of a way of differentiating yourself from other similar providers doing similar work. I think it kind of creates this signature, this energetic signature of who you are and kind of helps people kind of connect to that potentially. And and like you said, I love that it's like it's hard to know the impact this is going to have on your business just by the process of creating it and exploring this transformation that you're moving through. Is also kind of a cool idea to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's definitely a similarity to books there too. And there even, you know, there might be authors who have written a book and they want to add a card deck
Yeah,
onto that. That's quite common
sure.
as well.
Common.
Um,
Mhm.
but yeah,
And
just
then
coming.
also I think maybe just using it inside your work, right?
Mhm,
So
yes.
kind of helping people anchor into some of the like, you know, messages inside your business. It's a pretty I want to say kind of straightforward way of getting to the heart of your message when you're dealing with this kind of, it's just another way of kind of helping people understand, comprehend, and then embody it.
Yes, that's a really good point, actually. And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, you know, let's say you're working with clients one-on-one or even in groups.
Yeah.
They don't always have access to you, but if you have a card deck for them, they can use on their own. It's like it's an
Mhm.
additional tool for them to use on their own. And I think
Yeah.
card decks are really beautiful in that way because they're really simple and structured really well. So you really
Yeah.
bring all the important pieces in there, and then it's interactive and you know you can work with it
Yes.
hands-on. So
Yeah.
it
And
can be
it's
really
intuitive.
powerful.
So it's like you get to kind of receive the guidance. It's almost like having, if getting the benefit of having that coach or provider sitting across from you, kind of giving some insight, but it's also self-guided, which I think is going to become more and more valuable for people, especially in this time of kind of like AI and a lot of outsourced kind of wisdom or feedback and people kind of outsourcing everything. I think this benefit of us being self-guided and following, understanding how we move through things and is going to become more and more important in being anchored to ourselves and being able to kind of move through life in that way.
I totally agree with you. We've been talking about that a lot. It's just, you know, like one evolution, let's say within ourselves or in the greater
Mhm.
society, like it always leads to something else too. So maybe now, right now, we're a lot of that is being highlighted where we're giving our power away to outside of authorities. And I mean,
Mhm.
we've been doing that in different ways for a long
Yeah,
time, but I think with AI,
there's
it's really
it's
highlighting that even more. But
yeah,
it's getting to the point where, you know, you see posts on social media, you don't know if it's real or not. Like some people won't be able to tell if
true.
it's real or not. And
Yeah,
you start questioning everything, and it's like, how do I even know what the truth is? And the only way to really come back to the truth is to learn to trust, like our own inner guidance and connect back within. And I think that's exactly what you were sharing. I feel
yeah,
like,
and
yeah.
having tools to be able to connect us
Mm.
to that, especially when we're just really, I mean, I think always, honestly, but in different levels, like if you're just kind of starting to understand, say, for example, your own intuition or kind of coming back to being able to be self-guided, um, then having a tool is so valuable because it feels a lot less like, well, where do I even begin? Where do I start? But then as you're going, maybe you've been doing this for a while and you do know how to trust your intuition and you do know how to tap into some of those internal guidance. It helps to go deeper, or maybe give you a different perspective because we all can have a little bit of blinders on when, we're moving through almost anything. Yeah.
Totally. And I guess just maybe one thing I want to share here too. So when I was done creating the card deck and I guess waiting for the Kickstarter launch, or maybe waiting for the first physical sample, I got the inspiration to create a companion journal for it. And that's kind of the
Mm,
next level of that. Like it helps you deepen
yeah,
even more with like guided questions. And I feel like that's, yeah, that's
I love
the
that.
same thing.
Yeah.
And then just having something physical to work with, I think that's another
Yeah.
thing
Yep.
that's becoming more and more important because there's
Mhm.
so much happening in the online world and we're so connected digitally, but I think people are really craving having something physical. Like I know it's for myself, I'm
Fine.
feeling that. I
Yep.
feel like I'm craving doing things with my hands, connecting with
Hmm.
people in
Yep.
person, and again, the
Absolutely. And
physical.
and yeah,
Hmm.
and it kind of it does a few things because we have this physical kind of anchor, but then it's also helping us tap into, our spirit team or our guidance or these other elements. So it's kind of this really sweet magical spot, I think, because it's like blending, it's not just reading something to tell you how to do something. It's really helping you learn how to do it, how to find that information. So, I love that so much. Um, and I love the conversation because I think, especially for business owners, it's like, what's my return on investment? And you mentioned like, yes, there will be an opportunity to sell decks, but you probably that might not be the most like financial lucrative part of this. It's also in how you're kind of incorporating it into your business, how what's being grown off of it or built around it, or how are you pulling that into your own business to make yourself, kind of stand out. So I think it's important, but I also think it's important, yes, that part is absolutely beneficial, but then there's this other side of kind of the energetic part of it's hard to know how this is going to truly impact you and your business, until you're open-hearted and moving through it and trusting that you are becoming the version of you, that this creative container is going to help you kind of expand.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, it feels like there's been a theme on this call, like
Yeah.
and I really see that. I've seen it on my own journey, and I was just talking to a past client just very recently, I think a few days ago. She mentioned how, and this is something that I don't even always get to see, what happens after we've created the deck together, but she
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
shared with me how creating this deck was such an important part of her evolution. Like in her
Mm-hmm.
case, she's also a creative service provider, coach, and
Mm-hmm.
she had the connection to, the intuitive world, but she was very much in the closet around it. But she has this gift that's actually really valuable for her clients as well when she works with them. And so creating this deck and this intuitive tool kind of helped her come out of the closet in that way and then embrace that gift and make a bigger impact with everything that she does for her clients as well, just bringing in that intuitive element. So that I think that's a really good example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think so for anyone who's curious, like kind of on the fence about this, keep that in mind too, that yes, there are very tangible things. And, I know Anna can speak to those and already have, but there's also this element of be curious, be open, and let this kind of move through you and help you become, the entrepreneur or whatever, however it's going to grow you. We aren't sure. You don't know until you step into it sometimes, right? Um, for someone who has been sitting on a deck idea, but hasn't taken action, what would you want them to understand about the support your membership provides?
Well, just kind of thinking back, I feel like this has been a very common theme on my journey of helping creators bring their card decks to life in general, even before we started the membership. But I think it's the biggest part here really is the decision to commit to the project. I feel like when you make the investment, you
Mm,
say, okay, now is the time. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get the
yeah.
support I need. I think that's really the portal that you step through, and then
Yes.
that helps to because you can be sitting on an idea for a very long time and not taking action on it. And sometimes it
Mhm.
needs time to gestate. But I think when you
Yeah.
make that decision, okay, now's the time, I'm going to get the support I need. I think that's really what brings things
I love
into
that.
motion
I
in that
love the
way.
idea that making a decision can be such a definite, like really create the momentum. And then, when you're investing in something, it pushes you to show up for it. It's like, okay, well, I'm doing this, so this is the time, like making that commitment. And then I'm sure the community and the guidance and the support, of course, but just making the decision is like one of the most powerful parts of the process, it sounds like.
Yeah, so I think that part, and then also knowing that you have the support you need, it makes it easier because you know,
Yeah.
okay, now maybe because a lot of people sit on the idea for a long time because they have no idea where to start. They don't know, no, because it feels so big that they just don't take that next step forward because it just feels too complex. And so
Yep.
when you have the support, that helps to make that part easier. So I think the combination of
Definitely.
those two things
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Yeah. And so it sounds like once you decide to just make the decisive decision that this is going to be that you're going to get the support you need, you have everything, and then just show up for it in that kind of in that energy. And I think you're going to be so, happy that you made that decisive decision. Because I think that like being indecisive, like having something kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of want it is one of the most for me, in my personality is, and like you said, sometimes you need to have something gestate. It's not quite what I'm talking about. I'm talking more about the indecision that can be so, um, it can be so insidious in a way because when we're sitting in indecision, it kind of keeps us stuck. And even if you decide, you know what, I don't want to do it, that is also powerful. But just making a decision and then committing to it and trusting that that was the right decision, is one of the most powerful things you can do, especially when it comes to deciding that you're going to do something, that you're going to move through this, that you're ready, this is the time, do it decisively, and then just step into it fully, is a really good energy to kind of entertain, I guess.
Absolutely. And it just reminds me of when I started making this deck, that's exactly what I went through and kind of comparing it to different types of
Yeah.
decision-making processes. But I feel like that was such a big part of making that decision. You know, I paid my illustrator up front and it was you know, a substantial amount and
Yeah.
it felt really good to do that because I knew, I was
Yeah.
weighing different options or other investments that I was considering and it was just really clear to me that this is what I wanted to put my energy into and this needed to happen and when I feel into making that investment, it just feels like a clear yes. Then I know, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing, and
Yeah.
I'm committing to
And
this.
then you
And
made the commitment to it at that moment. You're like,
yes,
okay, this is the path, and I'm creating space, and I'm, giving this the attention it deserves. And when if you wouldn't have done that, you could have kind of sat in the, oh, I want to create this Oracle deck for who knows how long, right?
mm,
So
yes,
I think one of the things, kind of some of my own insight is if you're kind of like, I'd like to, and oh, I don't know, and doing a lot of the second guessing, like honestly, do yourself a favor and just commit to a decision because a decisive decision can always become the right decision. But kind of sitting in that in between and straddling is ugh, I don't know. For me, it's one of the worst places. So I had to learn I had to learn and I used to do it. So I can totally relate. And I used to be kind of like a him har and like straddling the line and getting everyone else, should I do this? What do you think? And it's just an energy leak. And so now I just trust myself to make the decisive decision and then to move forward. And so, yeah, so I think to commit to something and to say, yes, I'm joining this membership. This is what I want to do, and I'm creating the time and space and energy I need to make this successful is a huge benefit. Yeah.
I can definitely relate to what you just shared too, because I have had those types of experiences
Hmm.
too. And maybe if it's a project that I'm working on my own, and I can
Hmm.
totally be one foot in and one foot out for a very
Yeah.
long time. Like I take some action on it, but I don't have
Yeah.
the urgency to like fully commit to it. It can take a very
Yeah.
long time for it to come to life. And then by the time it's done, then I feel I'm almost past the point where, it's even still
Yeah. It's
worth
not, it's
launching
kind
it
of
because
like
I've
you're
already kind of,
detached from the idea. You're just kind of like not super, yeah. So, and certain things, like you said, need things to gestate. And I think that's a different energy when we're giving something space than when we're kind of second guessing ourselves on moving forward. That's kind of two different energies, I think. So,
yes, completely.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, in kind of wrapping this up, is there anything final that you'd kind of like to share with folks who are considering joining your membership, considering bringing a deck to life? Just anything that you want to add to the conversation?
Hmm. I actually feel I may want to pull a card from one of my decks. Would
Oh,
that be okay?
yes, I would love that. Let's do that. Yay.
And then maybe I'll have some last words for
Yeah, that's a great way.
the deck creators. Let's see. Okay, I'll just pull one from the Oracle of the Magical Fairy Forest.
Yeah.
And maybe some focusing on some creative slash business guidance. Um, okay, so you got the loosen your grip card.
Mm,
So it's number 34 in the deck. Loosen the grip, let go of control, receive with ease.
mm,
And I feel like this is such an important part of the creative process as well, maybe that we haven't touched on so much in this
mm.
conversation, which
Yeah.
now doesn't surprise me that it's coming up. We've talked a lot about the structure and the guidance and commitment and all
Hmm.
that is great. And that's, the masculine energy that we need to bring
Hmm.
something to life in the physical. But this really speaks to the feminine energy, so the receptive part. How do we move through the internal resistance? And I feel like on the creative journey, there's so much that kind of come up in that realm where maybe, yeah, like we're too like trying to control the process too much, or
Sure.
maybe there's, we have a
Yeah.
certain idea of
Too
how it's
attached to the
supposed
outcome.
to unfold, and the creative process is not straightforward. Like we can give you all the steps and all the guidance, but it's going to be so different for everyone. And I feel
Mm,
like that's actually one of my favorite parts of holding space for creators as well. Just going through that messy part together and holding space for that because
yeah.
it's so beautiful. And
Yes.
so I think just a reminder that there needs to be space for that as well. And there's so
Mm.
much healing that can happen there as well, that it's very freeing. So
I love that. I love
yeah.
that card and the message that came through. in reminding anyone who might be watching this that there's this very creative, energetic energy that's moving through this that you are creating, something that's going to be meaningful to you and the potential to reach other people. And it just kind of also reminds me, like, in this world of everything moving really quickly and AI and instant gratification, that us moving through a messy creative project can be exactly what our heart is needing the most, right? And I think it also kind of comes back to this idea of like the version of you who you're becoming, kind of what you're opening up, and the process might be surprising in the best ways. It might be confronting in some ways, and that's okay too. That's kind of how we grow. So I love that. I also have a quick question, even though I had said that that was the last thing. How do you
Mhm.
and your partner, what's kind of how have you all, your business partner, of the membership, and I can't remember his name, so I apologize about that,
Heath,
but Heath.
yes.
Okay. How kind of what is the energy that you've brought to this, and then what's the energy and knowledge that he's brought to it, and kind of how have you, how do you both kind of contribute?
So I think there are a lot of areas where we connect really well, and then we also have our own experiences and strengths. Heath has not really created a lot of decks for other people. He has mostly
Oh, sure.
created and launched his own. He has also supported some creators. Um,
Hmm.
and he has a lot of experience in the e-commerce realm. Like he's
Hmm.
been doing that in different areas for a very long time. So e-commerce, launching, Kickstarter, like he's really like
Yeah.
experienced in that realm. And I actually learned
Yeah.
a lot from him. I don't think I would have succeeded on the level that I did without his support when I did my Kickstarter. So
Hmm.
that was really helpful for me. So I can speak to that very
Yeah.
personally. And
Yeah.
then I have the background of not just making my own decks, but also supporting so many other people on this
Yeah.
journey. So I think, knowing what it takes to guide someone through the process. How do we structure it? Because it is very
Mhm.
different if we do it for ourselves versus guiding somebody else. So I think
Absolutely.
those are maybe the areas where we complement each other the most. Um, but I think other than that, it's just we're also on a very similar path in a lot of ways. I've looked at our astrology and we
Mm.
happen to have the same rising sign and then, the four directions. So same rising, same descendant, same midheaven,
Okay.
same IC. So
Okay.
we're really
Oh,
moving in the same
interesting.
direction and I feel like we
Yeah.
connect. So for anyone who knows astrology, but it's um yeah, I feel like it's just a very heartfelt connection where, we really enjoy collaborating with each other. It feels very guided, like this needed to happen. And I think
Yeah.
we're both really passionate, not just about the creative part, but also really guiding people or holding space for people to walk through that internal part of the journey. And like sometimes I feel like on
Yeah.
our group calls, I often feel like that's kind of the part that we're the most passionate about
Sure.
almost, or
Yeah, I
to
can
really find
absolutely
out.
agree. Because
Mm,
I think that someone could figure out how to probably create and even produce and maybe even like,
mm,
launch a card deck, if, I mean, you had done it. It's not something that people can't do. But what they might be surprised on is kind of the emotional undercurrent and things that they're moving
mm,
through. And that's where I think sometimes these kinds of containers provide the best kind of support, is the community, the camaraderie, the mentors who are, doing it alongside you, who've walked the walk and can kind of speak to it and hold space for your own kind of who you're becoming in it. Um, so yeah, I can see that being a big benefit.
Yeah,
Not
and I feel like
and
yeah.
not to say it's just like just the tangible, like here's the straight line that you don't have to go and do, a ton of like Google searching and talking to 100 people and figuring it out. Like here's the straight line. I think that's significant also. What do you think the difference between someone who wants to create their own and then with someone who wants to work with like a done for you provider? What would you say would be like a differentiator? Like, why would someone decide to do that? Like, join a membership that's kind of a done with you, versus a done for you.
Well, I think that done for you is just the fastest way to go through this process. So typically someone who's really busy
Mm,
and who may not need as much support with, the internal
yeah.
part or
Yeah.
yeah, like some parts of the process may not need as
They
much
might not
hand
receive
holding.
as much of the internal part. Like the done for you, not to
Mhm.
say you won't move through it, but
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know.
Mhm.
I just think that like if you're like, it may be a different outcome in the end for kind of what you're moving through.
Mhm. Yeah, so I would say this part has also always been part of the whole process, but it just the
Mm,
the support takes place more in the background in that way. Like we do move through
yeah.
the things that we need to move through, and there's a personal connection, and that's really
Yeah.
important to me as well. But
Sure.
we work on the project, and then typically after we're done, when we go separate ways in the community, you have support over a longer period of time, and it's more that sense of being on this journey together over a longer period of
Mm,
time, and
okay.
so there's definitely a bigger emphasis on the creative evolution and all the things that might not be so much of a focus when we're just really focused on getting this done and getting it
Yeah.
printed and out
And
into the
and
world.
just to
Yeah.
be clear, someone could have a
Mhm.
basically a done for you experience through your community because you're providing the resources and the referrals and kind of legitimizing some of the, like here are verified illustrators, for example, or copywriters if you are needing support with that. So just because you go through your membership doesn't mean you're not also, hiring other people to support you in the process.
Yes, I think that's really important. It really brings together both worlds. I feel like it
Mhm.
kind of merges that DIY route that I had
Yeah.
in the beginning that was just the course where there was not a
Right.
lot of personalized support for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, you can just get what you need. So if you need more
Yeah.
support, we can, yeah,
Yeah, so you
help
kind
you.
of can find your process. Like if you're really wanting, if you are a, creative person and you want to do the artwork and you want to, then you're going to have, the kind of the understanding and the support through that process. But if you're don't feel like that is one of your strong suits or something that you have time or energy, then you have resources available to you and people doing it kind of different ways. So, that's really interesting kind of offering. So, so if someone's considering or has an idea that they, they're listening to you and they're curious and they're like, yeah, I'm really interested. Where do they go to learn a little bit more about this process?
Okay, so if you're interested in joining the community, then you can go to deckcreators.com and you to find all of our offerings there. If you're interested in maybe more the publishing part of the process or maybe some other types of offerings, then I would encourage you to go to wonderlandpublishing.net. So that's my publishing business. And I have a lot of resources on there as well for deck creators and actually just
Okay.
put up a new workbook today, which focuses a little bit more on the launching part, like the making it sustainable for your business. So if you're interested in that, then that is totally new, and I think that's a really valuable resource.
Mm.
And then you'll also find my card decks on there.
Yeah,
So
let's talk about.
wonderlandpublishing.net, you'll find the Oracle of the Magical Fairy Forest, and then the link to the Magical Things shop where I sell my physical
And
products.
is that where people can purchase a copy of your deck if
Yes,
they're
so
wanting
that's
to?
magicalthings.ca.
Okay, magicalthings.ca. I love that. And absolutely gorgeous deck that you have there. And I would encourage anyone to check it out and check out Anna's resources and the different ways that she supports entrepreneurs or creatives in creating card decks and bring them out to the world. So,
Yeah, thank you so much. It
yeah,
was really
thank you
fun.
for the conversation. I'm so glad we did it.
I'm just gonna stop the recording.